QML module, it's a relatively new term that people have been using since, I guess, about Qt 6.2 when they really came to be. A QML module really brings together all of the things to do with related files around a particular feature. And I think it would be good to think about a collection of usable or reusable controls or classes. QML modules are absolutely fundamental to building a good structured application. And when we talk about QML modules, we're not talking just about QML files, we're talking about C++ files, and we're also talking about things like your fonts, your image resources, and anything else that you might want to collect together. It also helps for you to be able to organize your thoughts as well. When you're working on big projects like we are, we can't afford to have 1,000 QML files in one place. It just doesn't work, and we would have that many easily.
Hi, and welcome to the next episode of CuteTalk. It is a format in which we talk about various software development topics, but in particular, we focus on things we know the best, like Qt framework, C++, cross-platform programming, a bit of embedded, a bit of project management, a bit of running a software house company. And today with us is Mike Trahearn. Mike is a senior software engineer with extensive knowledge on Qt framework, especially on using this technology for HMI projects and in various R&D projects. Mike fell in love with QML a long time ago, but just recently Mike discovered LinkedIn, and Mike became kind of a celebrity there. And I really recommend to check out his series of tips on using QML, on good practices for Qt Quick. It's really worth checking out. So, yeah, Mike, nice to have you here.
Thank you for inviting me to join you today.
You're welcome. And one small off topic, Mike is British, but he moved to Australia in
August 2017. And I'm pleased to announce that I've just passed my citizenship test. So I'm going to be an honorary Australian very soon. Very soon. So, we've been here about 6.5 years. And we moved here to get away from the grey and the cold and exchanged for the glorious blue skies of the Gold Coast. So I'm near Brisbane, and that's on the east coast. Look me up if anybody comes down here. It's a great place to come visit.
Yeah, it does not matter from where do you watch or do you listen us. I'm pretty sure that we all could be jealous about Mike's conditions of living. Yeah, so Mike, well, it's a pattern. It's our standard question to warm up our guests to start the talk. So please tell me, what was your last commit about?
Okay, so I'm currently working on a rather large project that uses the Qt application framework in Qt 6. I don't know anybody else around the world that is at the moment. And so my last commit was to do with the management of user profiles, settings, package installation, application management. So I've got lots and lots of overlapping tasks to do. So every commit that goes in is to do with that project. So yes, my last one was probably to fix some bug that I introduced when I didn't think it through properly. But I'm working with the application manager to build a brand new product, which I can't talk about.
But can you at least mention the industry?
Yes. For those that don't know, I work for Topcon, and we work in geopositioning and civil engineering. And we make a lot of equipment, touchscreen displays for machine control systems. That includes mapping and user interface control of these great big machines. and my role in that is for the HMI development and also a lot of the back end stuff as well. And I also get to work with managers on describing what the QML architecture ought to be for some of these large projects as well.
Okay, cool. So yeah, this feature that you mentioned, it sounds like something that has more to do with the backend with C++ than with QML. But uh, you suggested that today we should talk about QML modules. Please let us know why did you think about that as the topic worth our attention.
Or when you first invited me to join you today, it was the first thing that came to our mind because QML modules are absolutely fundamental to building a good structured application. And when we talk about QML modules, we're not talking just about QML files, we're talking about C++ files, and we're also talking about things like your fonts, your image resources, and anything else that you might want to collect together. Um, yes, while you say a lot of the work that I do does involve a lot of C++ for the back end, um, I write QML in my sleep. So it's doing the modules, creating the QML modules has become part of how a good application is put together. And so that's what I wanted to discuss with you today.
Yeah, and especially as since Qt 6 was released, there were many changes made, and it's like constantly changing, constantly improved. So yeah, maybe just to start, maybe let's first explain what are the QML modules.
Okay, so QML module, it's a relatively new term that people have been using since, I guess, about Qt 6.2 when they really came to be. A QML module really brings together all of the things to do with related files around a particular feature. And I think it would be good to think about a collection of usable or reusable controls or classes that you can use across your project, in other different projects. There are standalone compilation units. They will create a library or libraries that you can import into your QML application with a nice side effect that they can actually be used in C++ as well if they're well constructed. So it's a way of organizing things. Um, Previously, we would have had to have done things like putting topical files into subfolders and organizing our file system and maybe using Git submodules to help us with that. But really, your application may have been fairly monolithic. Um, Whereas with QML modules, it breaks it up very nicely into lots of smaller binary units, the libraries, and that means that we get the benefits of faster recompilation when you want to change a single line in a file somewhere. It just has to recompile that small part. It also helps for you to be able to organize your thoughts as well. When you're working on big projects like we are, we can't afford to have 1,000 QML files in one place. It just doesn't work. And we would have that many easily. So, um, yeah. So
Yeah,
that's, yeah, in a nutshell.
so basically, modules are a way to make the project more modular, to make it better organized and everything. So, what could be put in a module?
Okay. So, a QML module, as I mentioned earlier, it encapsulates QML files. It can take, you can put your C++ sources in there. So it's a little bit like a traditional C++ library, but with QML inside. If we remember back to the way QML would have been handled in Qt 5, your QML would be put into a QRC file and then passed through a compiler that would generate bytecode and add that into your library for you. With a QML module, your C++ library and your QML binary resources, they all go together. and also the QML plugin, and also the type registration. It's all in one place, which makes it absolutely wonderful to work with because you haven't got to comb through your code to find out how everything's supposed to work. Everything's in one place. You can also put your assets in there. I mentioned previously images, videos, sounds, fonts, anything you can put in a QRC file. You might want to put 3D models in there, data, text files,
Yeah,
JSON
everything.
objects, all sorts
JavaScript
of things.
files.
And the QML module will automatically decide what's a code source, what's a QML source, and run the right tooling for that. It will also run mock over the right files, and it will run RCC over the files and generate everything for you. It's very, very useful.
So maybe again, but in more details, let's talk about why I should actually care about organizing my project well with the modules. Well, I believe that the alternative is just to, well, with Qt 6, just to have one main module and put everything in there. Maybe I would like to separate and organize everything with the folders. So maybe again, just pretend that I'm a moron and I do not know anything about the modules, and forget that I had a talk about that on Qt World Summit. Forget about that and explain to me
Okay.
why I
Let's
should use
say
the
you're
modules
starting out
anyway.
with a Hello World example. That's probably where you would begin. And Qt Creator will make one of those for you. It will give you a main CPP, which basically offloads straight into QML, and off you go. And you can grow that project as much as you want. And let's say you had 100 files, and let's say you took to heart the idea of componentizing everything, and you had every last button and every last text box put in different files, and you would have a very, very large tree that would be very hard to navigate. And what you would start to find is that with that one application that did a lot of things, it's like that do one thing and do one thing well strategy. If your application is naturally going to be a large project, then it makes more sense to focus your attention on a sub part of that project, a specific feature that has a specific task. And if you make that to be a QML module, one of the great things that we do here is every module has a unit test smack bang next door to it. And so every module gets unit tested at the C++ and the QML level. And we do not pass any PRs until the unit test is done for it. And so we have regression testing built in straight up. So there's no excuses for anybody. And so I think when you've got a very large project, you can't contain all of that architecture in your head all in one go. If you can split it up into modules, different people can be responsible for those modules, and you can define the interfaces across those modules. And those interfaces will be very well defined, and they will, because we're using Qt 6, they'll be passed through all the tooling, and you won't be able to check them into your repository without passing through various checks and balances, including your unit testing as well. And it also allows you to do component reuse as well. One great benefit of using modules is that you can create reusable components. I know that's been discussed in this forum before. Modules allows you to define something, say within your company, that your other department next door can just import into their project, and it will just work. And that's really powerful. It also means that you can manage versions of separate parts of your project if you so wish to do that. Because modules, whilst that you don't need to import a version number, they are actually still versioned. So I think there's a lot to be said for managing the quality at the module level, and allowing to be reused and managed and distributed across your teams. Even when you've got small teams, or large teams, for one person or 10 people to work on one code base is not going to end well. Um, this is why we would we would recommend to use QML modules.
Well, the entire answer, especially the part about CA and unit tests, it was like the music to my ears. I have to admit. Yeah, so maybe if you could, I know that it depends a lot on the project. It depends a lot on the specifics. On it depends on the size. But could you like reveal what would be your strategy to divide part of the project into the modules? Would you rather do that by some, let's say, uh, functionalities? Would you divide by functionalities, by some visual parts, or by both?
I'd say yes to all of the above, and the
Mm-hmm.
reason is this: the first thing that comes to mind is when I'm attacking a new project. I'm a very visual thinker, and so it helps me to actually use some good old fashioned pen and paper,
Mm-hmm.
and I draw pictures, and I write, and I debate amongst myself what's the best way, and I try and understand, if I can, some of the things coming ahead. Um, if you don't have that visibility in your project, it's quite difficult to try and anticipate how to carve something up in a way that's meaningful to start with. But I would say at least use start with one module, define it, and you can always split it very easily into another. It's it's easy to do that. It's easy to rename a module. It's easy to duplicate one and sort of use that as a template for the next one, especially if you've got, like we have, like an empty module set up with an empty unit test set up, and we can just copy that, and that becomes the template for the next guy to do the work. Um, it does depend on the size of the project, and I would say that take the time to study it first. Um, don't get so keen to start typing code straight away. I like that. I love just getting into it. But equally, I love whiteboarding with other engineers and drawing out. And we've actually got some really low key Jira tickets, which literally contain photographs of whiteboards. And all the architecture is there, and we can look at those pictures and go, aha, that's the module, that's the module, that's the module. And that makes perfect sense because we've talked through the use cases and we understand where the reusability is. For example, we will sketch out some UI over here, and we'll sketch out some UI over here, and then realize, oh, it's the same thing, but with a different feature.
Again, that's the music to my ears. But uh, moment earlier, you said that you could always like um, take the functional take the functionality split from the rest of the project and make a module out of it. But I would say that you should be um, all the time you should be careful and watchful and check whether it's not the moment to do so, because the longer you go, it may be just more difficult to split the functionality out of
You're
the.
absolutely right. And I've come across some code, large project code, not ours. Well, we were reviewing somebody else's, and it did not have QML modules in it. It was written at a time before QML modules, and it's almost impossible to rebuild it with QML modules now, because as you've said, it's grown legs, and the legs have grown arms, and it's very difficult when you haven't if you haven't had that to start with. But now we do. There's no excuses. So yeah, it's difficult to think ahead. Take some time. Sometimes it's not obvious, I've been working on a code base for 6 months and I still go, oh, I think that should now be a module, because you find some reusable case where there are two parts that become so similar in either the back end code or remember QML modules also mean C++, so you might find that you end up abstracting some functionality away into a QML module which doesn't actually contain any QML. It's just there to supply the functionality to your QML.
Okay, so yeah, maybe now let's stop talking about like totally abstract things, and maybe let's go back to Earth, and maybe let's talk for a moment on how to actually create the modules. Just to make our listeners aware what they should use to split their projects, to make their projects like better way.
Okay, well, first of all, I'm assuming that the listener is going to be creating a project using CMake, and we're going to be writing a project using Qt 6.2 or later. And with that combination in the bag, Qt have provided for us some very nice CMake macros for us to use to create these modules. And in fact, if you do a hello world example straight out of Qt Creator, it will create you a very basic CMake project containing an executable and a QML module already sat there for you. So yeah, and you can see already in there the Qt add QML module macro. The documentation for it is verbose. It's quite difficult to get your head around. It's very powerful. However, it is the one place, it's the go-to place to put your QML modules together. It helps you to specify your QML sources, your C++ sources, your binary resources, all within one macro in your CMake. And it's very, very readable. Everything is nice and tidy there.
Yeah, and then this CMake command, Qt add QML module. I mean, it has a lot of keywords, it has a lot of options, and this list in the documentation grows all the time with every Qt 6 version. If you look at your viewer, dear listener, for an example, sorry, Mike, short advertisements, I made a GitHub project with the example how to put your assets in the module, how to put your C++ in the module. Yeah, and something other. I don't even remember, but it's on our GitHub, and I'm going to put the link in the description to this video. Yeah, so Mike,
May I likewise do an also shameless plug? One of my well, just on the same topic, one of the hot tips articles that you can find on my LinkedIn profile. I think it's entitled "Do My Resources Look Big in This?" It's a little bit humorous, but it actually deals with where you've got very large assets like complex 3D models or videos or something like that, and how to add those into your CMake QML modules effectively. And the way that that's actually done is not widely known. So I thought it was probably a really good idea to write that down. So go ahead and check that out too.
Yeah, and it's also going to be in the description. So, Mike, you mentioned that the biggest issue here is that people are not using modules. Are there any other issues that people are making?
I think a lot of the issues where it comes to not using modules is the unfortunate journey that we've come through with Qt5 and the way that C++ and QML were integrated into the application at that point. We were largely kind of left on our own to register our own types for QML, and we would have to create our own modules by hand. a lot of the time. And if we were lucky, we would have our modules, if they were shared libraries, the QML plugin dump would run behind the scenes to give QML, Qt Creator a bit of a hand. The issue with that is that your types are over here, your registration of those types is over here. They're in two different places, and your QML might be somewhere else. So I think one of the biggest paradigm shifts moving from Qt 5 to Qt 6, and I've done this shift myself, is thinking about everything's kind of organized in one place. And it makes so much sense once you can get to that. And I think one hard thing for other developers that I've seen them trip over is to not understand the magic that happens. The QML modules are to some extent quite magic, but to actually use them requires understanding that magic. And I like to imagine that a magician pulls a rabbit out of a hat, but you need to understand the hat first. And so I think many of the problems with QML and registering your C++ types is that things can go wrong if you don't do it right. With Qt 5, it was quite easy to get tied up in quite a mess to do that. And actually, something that I've realized just recently, which is very, very fundamental, in Qt 5, there was actually the concept of not just where a type was registered so you could use it in QML, it was also a case of when. And that when was really a fundamental problem, because you would find applications with all of the type registration in their main CPP, just so that it got done at the top. And then you had lots of couplings where you wouldn't want them. And also you could find yourself with those registration code in functions that may not get called for some reason. It's in an if for a switch or something like that. And so while everything
not to mention polluting entire project with those register types in places where you don't really need them.
Well, that's right, and also you can register types into someone else's modules by accident, just by a little error in your string. Yes. It's not difficult to do. So where QML modules really comes to an advantage is that all the module names are the same for every file that you add to them. The version number is the same. The module URI is the same. The import path is the same. The resource prefix for QRC is the same. And one big change, which came in at 5.15 actually, was the idea of the declarative type registration. So no longer do we have to suffer QML register type template anymore.
String, version.
Yeah, that's right. Very difficult. And, you had to get that exactly right and have it called in exactly the right place and build a plugin class to call it and all that kind of stuff. These days, we don't need to do that. You take your class, if it's a C++ class, and you open the header where it says QObject, you put QML element in. That's all you have to do. There's a whole lot of magic that happens behind the scenes. If you want to know about that, go back to Qt World Summit 2019. Great series by Ulf Herman there, how all that works. But now all you have to do, you take your class and you go, this is a QML consuming class. This class is to be used in QML. And then you say, is it a singleton, or is it anonymous, or is it uncreatable? What's the using of this class in the class? And you define it in the class. So the class documents its own usage. Its type registration might be buried behind the scenes in some automatically generated code, but it follows your rules. And those rules are in the class. It's very, very tight.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And in fact, Mike, I would say that, after this topic, our viewers and listeners probably would like to know more, uh, please tell me, because I agree that like the documentation of um, Qt at QML module is not sufficient enough. That's why I make the talk on Qt World Summit about that. That's why I made that example. But yet there are not many resources to learn about the usage of modules and all of that detailed stuff, including like making like libraries out of the modules, like sharing between projects. Do you have any ideas what we as the community, not Sci Studio, not Mike, not Lucas, what we as the community could do to teach people more about modules?
Gosh, it's a very big topic, and given the different types of people involved that you just mentioned, it's very difficult to know exactly where to put that resource. I can think of many places and different people will be responsible for that. I mean, right now there's brand new platforms like the Qt Academy, which can run through various different courses. You've got partner companies such as Sci Studio that will have wonderful documentation of their own projects, and they also have a Qt QML developer blog series on their website, which is I've learned a lot from. Um, I think it's a matter of learning. It's a matter of connecting with people. I don't think it's a problem if you say, "Hey, how do you do that?" to a mate, because somebody has been there before you. Um, so don't be afraid to ask. I think it's one of the saddest things when you see a developer sitting there for hours on end, scratching their head and not having a friend to give them a hand. Reach out within the bounds of projects and technical limitations. Somebody can point you in the right direction. Reach out. There's forums. There's companies. There's social media. We can all give you a bit of a lift on how to do all of those kind of things. Some of the cases are really simple. How can I create my first module? And that's really easy to get along with. When it starts to get complicated, when you start organizing your file system, where do my modules end up? Oh, help, I'm deploying to a target and they're all over the place, or the QML code model's not working anymore. These kind of um, working working problems. You need to be able to tap somebody on the shoulder and say, hey, how do you do that? And if you don't know who to ask, well, you can ask either of us. We can signpost easily how to do that.
Yeah, Mike. So thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for being my guest in CuteTalk. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
Gosh, there's so much to talk about. so many things. We could do a whole other session on this and what you can do and the creative things that you could do with this. Um, I would just add, read the documentation. It's a hard go, but it's worth it because you'll find out so many different things. If you don't talk to a company outside your own company about Qt, do so. Make a point of being a nuisance. That's what I do. It gets me notoriety, but yeah, make a nuisance of yourself because you'll learn, and when you learn, you can teach others, and when you teach others, you learn even more. So yeah, make a point of just finding out. Don't get stuck. Let's unstick you and make sure that you can succeed in your projects.
Yeah, that was the best way to end this episode. Thank you, Mike. Yeah, and dear viewer, dear listener, let me know in the comments how you like the episode. Let me know whether we should have Mike with us again and what topic possibly we should mention. Yeah, I encourage you to leave a like under our video. Maybe you could consider giving us a subscription. Why not? Check out the links in the description. There will be links to the posts, to Mike's LinkedIn profile, to the resources we just mentioned during the video. Yeah, and thank you a lot for being with us. See you in the next episode.